Are very excited to kick this presentation off today. Just to introduce ourselves, my name is Caroline Borman. I'm an assistant director here at the University of Pennsylvania. Molly, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everybody. Super excited to have you all here today. We've got a large group of people. So my name is Molly, and I am also an assistant director of admissions here at the University of Pennsylvania. So yeah, excited to chat with you guys and help you learn more about this part of the application.
Excellent. So the reason we're super excited about this today, because this applies to every single college applicant, no matter where you're applying to, whether it's Penn or other institutions. So today we're just going to be elaborating on what you can submit within your activities list and how it's really important to be meaningful behind how you format this, how you talk about your involvements, and how you express the impact that you made on your community. So again, regardless of where you apply, we hope this is just an important and helpful session for you all today. So Molly, you want to take off with the agenda?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of information for you guys, kind of jam-packed into the next hour we have together. So we'll spend a good chunk of time talking just about why the activity section really matters. I think that sometimes this section has the ability to get glossed over and students are really focused on the essays or the other components of the application, but really how to make sure you guys know that these activities really matter, and it's kind of how we view how you're participating in your communities and beyond. We'll talk about the importance of context. Obviously, understanding that all of you that are logged onto this webinar right now are going to be applying from many different parts of the world or the country. Your activities are going to look different, and that's okay. So we'll talk about the contextual pieces that we really utilize to see what you're involved in, but in the scope of your high school, your community, and really beyond that too. We'll break it down as to just what is an activity. I think sometimes students can sometimes get a little caught up in just being like, oh, can I put this on my activity section? Or what about this? Does this count? Truly, there's no right or wrong answer, but hopefully with our explanation can really provide some inspiration as to things you guys might want to further include on this section. We'll talk about really presenting your activities in a way that's going to help us as admissions officers just really get all of the important details to, again, showcase how you're navigating and really participating in your communities. And then we'll also talk about some tips for engagement and kind of crafting your activities list. With that being said, we do have a poll for you guys today. And so hopefully this could just kind of help us understand what your activities are. So you guys should see a poll now. What activities are you involved in? There's several categories here that you can see to choose from. So feel free to fill that out. We'll leave that up for the next about 30 seconds just to kind of see what you guys are involved in today.
Awesome. Already seeing so much action. It looks like we're seeing a lot of volunteering, a lot of school clubs. Almost every category I think we got covered so far. So keep those answers coming in. It's great to see you all engaging with that. So kicking off this presentation, talking about why activities matter. Let me see. I have to use this to get this next slide showing up. There we go. So why do activities matter? You might be thinking, I have so much else in my application, from my essays to my transcript to letters of recommendation. What do my activities really show? And it's really important just to see how you're engaging with those around you, how you're making an impact on your community. So the things that you choose to engage with are really important for us to see, because the things that matter to you enough to, take up time in your day outside of class means that it's important to us. So we really just want to learn about you and what matters to you and new things that we don't see in other elements of the application. So when we talk about activities, we're talking about everything you do outside of the classroom, whether it's clubs, sports, community service, or things that don't really fall into the school category, but maybe it's a job that you have outside of school, or maybe some family responsibilities. Again, we're going to say this throughout the presentation, but we really want you to think beyond the confines of just school activities. Everything, however you're spending your time, really counts. And so the purpose of the activities list is really just to provide a helpful context for us as admissions officers evaluating you to see how you engage in the world around you and how you might engage in the world at Penn. And so as part of our own holistic whole person review process, we truly want to get to know you, and the ways that you spend your time outside the classroom really help to paint a fuller picture for us. So how you spend your time outside of class is part of your personal story. And so however you fill out that time and spend your time outside the classroom, it just gives us a whole picture of who you are, what matters to you, enough to contribute that time in those clubs, those sports teams, those performing arts activities, whatever it may be. I think we've seen almost all of the people fill out this poll today, which is great. It looks, again, our front runners, we have some school clubs, we have volunteering, but then there's a smattering of others. We see some visual and performing arts, music, a lot of wonderful results. So I'll share those out. But Molly, what were you involved with in high school back in the day?
Oh gosh, I was played lacrosse, so there was some sports clubs in there. I was a theater kid for a few years. I did some music on the side, some volunteering through National Honor Society. This is like a total time warp to think back all the way to high school.
I know, right?
But seeing a lot of like similarities in what you guys are all putting in this poll. So it's really cool to just I don't know, get to see our audience of roughly like 1,100 people on this call right now. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's wonderful. Okay. So moving on to the next section, do you want to take it away?
yeah, absolutely. So with that being said, Caroline definitely mentioned some of these parts, and just like context is so, so key. And context is a big word that you'll probably hear us referring to, not only when we talk about the activities section, but really every part of your application, because we're never going to compare what you're involved in as a student or as a person to a student that goes to a school, even down the street or across the country or across the world, because we understand that every community is different. We also understand that sometimes there's external things that happen that might impact your abilities to dive into activities, and how that might be relayed to this section when you are kind of crafting and writing this component of your application. So context is really key. Again, we're never going to wonder, oh, well, this student's doing this activity. Why isn't this student doing this activity? It truly is going to look so different. And that context is something that we always keep in the back of our mind when, again, evaluating this part of your application, but really every single part of your application. And this might also look different if you're homeschooled per se. Maybe you don't have kind of that like traditional school setting to really dive into some of the activities you might find in a traditional high school setting. Or maybe you attend a really small high school in a super rural community, and their offerings just aren't as robust as maybe a really large public high school that's more in a kind of metropolitan area. Or maybe your activities don't look like what your school offers. I mean, maybe that's you have a really busy at home life. Maybe you have several siblings that really look to you for guidance and leadership in your familial context. How do you support your family, maybe younger siblings or any other family members that might be living with you per se? It might be maybe you have an hour and a half commute to school one way and an hour and a half commute to school back. And that's a lot of time and responsibility that we see. So there really isn't any right or wrong answer, but we understand that the context in which you're getting engaged with your community and your peers and your school, it's all going to look very different. So try not to get too much in the mindset of like the black and white thinking or the right or wrong thinking, but more so understanding that we really look at it all in the context of you as a person and as a student.
Absolutely. So in terms of what activities can be, activities again really help admissions officers learn more about you, your interests, your passions, and your engagement within your community. So these are kind of the questions that admissions officers hope to answer by learning about your engagement outside the classroom. And so the questions that you see here on the screen are really broken down into different types of activities. So the interests that you may have, which answer the questions, what are you passionate about? How do you spend your time outside of the classroom? And admissions officers, we're not looking for specific interests or activities or jobs. Your interests and activities are truly what make you unique and what sets you apart from other applicants from your school or from the national pool that we have. So whether you're caring for siblings or maybe elderly relatives, maybe you're captaining the soccer team or working 20 hours a week to support your family, telling us how you spend your time outside the school day is really important. And so it provides context and really helps us get to know you and who you are outside the classroom. In terms of the engagement, we ask the questions, how do you interact with your peers and fellow citizens? How are you contributing to your communities? So admissions officers, we're not just trying to fill a class, we're building communities. And we're looking for roommates or lab partners, teammates, and most importantly, friends. And so we want you to understand how you will be a citizen to our campus, to the greater Philly area, and really take advantage of our resources and contribute to our community. In terms of responsibilities, this can also kind of lead into the idea of leadership. So, how have you made a meaningful impact through your activities and commitments? Leadership and responsibility can be found in more than just titled roles. Perhaps you're the glue that holds the team together, or the employee who is trusted to open and close the store, or maybe the student council president who worked to create a new school program or tradition. It's really important for you to tell us what you've done in your activities and how you've been a part of the team, the business, or the organization, whatever structure you're a part of.
And I think that the way Caroline just presented that information is just a really helpful way at kind of understanding and crafting this part of your application. Kind of asking yourself these questions: what am I passionate about? What am I responsible for? And in return, you guys will see this really wonderful list of just some examples that might come to mind when you are thinking about the activities to therefore then list on the section of your application. So in regards to interests, that can again be a sport that you're playing, whether that be at your school or maybe in a club that's in your local community. Maybe that's performing arts. Maybe you're a theater kid like I was for a few years in high school, or maybe you just do art on your own time, or maybe you have your own Etsy shop, as a few examples of that. We've also got school clubs. So again, more traditional school setting, whether that be like National Honor Society or your Key Club, or maybe you're really involved in student council. Hobbies, again, are a great thing to list here. Anything that you guys are doing personally, it doesn't have to be a formalized group or organization to count as an activity. So if you play guitar 10 hours a week and you do lessons once a week, that showcases, again, that kind of ties back to that question about what are you passionate about and how does that tie into the time spent each week that you're really putting into these different things. Want to talk about summer programs too. I think that sometimes students can kind of think that they have to be doing these activities for a year to count, or for a few months to count, and that's not always the case. As I'm sure some of you might be aware of, or maybe you're diving into these opportunities already, there's a lot of summer programs out there to help prepare students for not only college, but just kind of in general to help explore your different interests and get some more experience in different areas. So if you've attended a summer program that maybe was 3 weeks, that's absolutely valuable and important to include on your application. So don't necessarily think it has to be a certain time frame in which it's taking place. Again, it can be a week-long thing, it can be a 3-week-long thing, it can be a 4-year-long thing. It really doesn't matter. Engagement, again, how you're kind of engaging with not only your community, but your school, your family, whoever else you might be interacting with kind of on a consistent basis. Whether that be through maybe service opportunities, maybe you're really involved with different volunteering organizations in your community or at your school. Maybe you're already diving into research. I was not in that mindset in high school, but some of you are probably way ahead of the game and already diving into some of the academic pieces of really areas of study that you might be considering applying to when it's time to apply for college. So whether that be research through, again, a formal lab or program, or maybe you're kind of doing some independent research on your own, that's great. And that shows how you're engaging with potential curriculum that might be down the line for you in your academic college. Caring for community or family, we mentioned this a little bit earlier, but family responsibilities absolutely count. So again, that's a great way, kind of a thing to identify when thinking about things that do take up significant amount of time, or just generally putting your voice or talents to use. Trying to think of an example, we had there was a student when I was in high school who was like really involved with slam poetry in my local town, and he did that like basically every week. And so again, doesn't have to be anything super formal, and it can really look like anything. And the responsibilities are also a big one. Jobs and internships definitely showcase this, whether that be, again, just during summer, or maybe you also work throughout the school year. Maybe it's a part-time job, maybe it's a full-time job. Jobs absolutely count and really showcase that responsibility component. again, taking care of things in your family, such as cooking dinner or grocery shopping, and also those substantial commutes are all really, really positive ways to showcase us this. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but hopefully can provide some maybe inspiration or ideas as you are looking at this part of the application, but a great way to kind of answer those questions that Caroline mentioned in the previous slide.
Great. So those of you that are seniors, or even maybe we have some freshmen tuning in today, would not be surprised. It's important to even think about choosing your activities. Even though you're a senior, maybe you want to join something new senior year. That's great. And it's important to keep in mind that the real reason that you're engaging with these communities, these spaces, these activities is really because it matters to you. We always say that we'd rather see students who are really digging in and really having an impact in these spaces rather than just trying to fill out all 10 spots of the activities list. And so we really want this to be meaningful to you. So balance is really key to high school and really will enable you to succeed and enjoy your 4 years. So we aren't looking for specific activities or leadership roles. So we really want you to focus on the activities that you can learn from, that you can grow in, and that you can truly enjoy. So when you graduate from high school, you really want to look back fondly on your high school experience and take the skills and the passions that you learned and explored with you to college. So you're doing these activities for you, not your college application. So the questions that you really need to be asking yourself now, again, maybe throughout high school or now as a senior, is that, again, what is important to me, but also how can I and what can I realistically manage in addition to schoolwork and family responsibilities? The school day certainly eats up a ton of your time, both in the classroom and at home in terms of coursework. And so we don't want you to be overloading yourself at the same time. So we want you to be reasonable in terms of what you're choosing to engage. Also, why are you choosing to engage in this program? Again, maybe it's because you have a talent. Maybe you're joining performing arts because you love to sing. Maybe you're doing sports because you have that athletic talent, or maybe you're trying to grow and stretch yourself. I always talk about, times that I was dragged to different clubs or extracurriculars because a friend was like, I need a buddy, come with me. And those can sometimes end up to be the most impactful and kind of life-changing experiences. So we want you to be open to different activities, things that can grow you and stretch you and maybe make you feel a little bit out of your comfort zone or wheelhouse. But at the same time, choosing things that feel natural and fun and happy for you. And so, again, it's important to ask these questions, not only in your senior year, but maybe even into college as you move on to extracurriculars to grow your experience.
Yeah, with that being said, we want to know the specifics of the activities that you're involved in. So we've kind of talked about like what is an activity, what can we, what are some ways, what are things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis that make up this part. But it's really, we want to know the specifics. I think that it's kind of helpful to realize that us as admissions officers, we're reviewing this information really for the first time as it relates to you, and we might not know what an activity is. So it's really important to look at this list of specific details and really highlight this for each and every one that you decide to list on the application. So first and foremost, activity name. This can be maybe you're a clarinet player in the marching band, or maybe you're really involved with your local soccer club team. That should really be right up front and center, just kind of that basic first name. But then attached to that should also come your position within that activity. Whether that's a leadership role, maybe you're like an introductory member because you just joined this organization or you just joined this activity. Maybe you're vice president of Key Club at your high school. So make sure that we're understanding not only the activity itself, but your role within the activity. We'll be able to see participation. So how many years you've been doing this activity. If it's just a month during the summer, that's great. If it's been all 4 years, that shows, again, consistent commitment that you've put into this activity. And either a month or 4 years is totally fine. But again, it helps us understand kind of how long this activity has really been a part of your life. The scope is really important for us to acknowledge. I think maybe an example of this is if a student gets a scholarship. Sometimes that's school-based, However, sometimes that's a national scholarship that you won, and that's a big difference in terms of how many applications people had to go through to pick the award winners. So being able to identify if it's something that's school-based within your region or within your state, but also if it's on a national basis, that helps again showcase the scope of the activities that you're doing. We'll also want to know if you have an intent to really participate in this activity in college. There's no right or wrong answer. If you've been doing soccer all 4 years and you're like, man, I don't know if I want to do this in college, that's okay. But it can be a great way, just again, we're kind of seeing how these activities and what you're involved in might translate to our community eventually. So great way to really highlight if you do plan on continuing anything at Penn or really wherever school you're applying to. We'll want to see the time of participation. So this kind of goes back to a few points I made earlier, but are you doing this solely in school? Maybe you work a part-time job over winter breaks or summer breaks. It's important to note that. Or maybe this is something that you do on a yearly basis. So both during school and break and summertime, all of that stuff. Again, showcases the differences there. We'll want to see hours per week. We'll want to see again if that's something that you're doing, if you're committing 5 hours per week during the school year, or maybe you're upping your hours during the break time, or maybe you've held a consistent amount of hours throughout the year. That kind of again helps tie into that scope component and that time commitment each and every week. Weeks per year ties into that too. Is this just something you're doing in the summertime, or is this full year? And then the details, honors, and accomplishments is where you can add some additional details. So can add, maybe you've worked your way up to the role that you currently hold in a position. That's a great thing to detail. Maybe you just want a little bit more information to put out there that helps showcase us what this activity is. Maybe you're quantifying what you're doing. Maybe instead of putting that you're a part of this volunteering organization, it's like, oh, we serve 5,000 people every year through this volunteering organization. So can detail any honors, accomplishments, progressive leadership responsibilities that you've had. Those are all really, really important things to detail. And I will say too that sometimes the activities list doesn't capture everything. So don't hesitate to also use the additional information section of the application. You are also welcome to upload a resume, which is a great way to kind of creatively showcase what you're involved in. Again, the more information that we have, the better. But hopefully this can help provide some information as to how to include all that on the activity section specifically.
Excellent. So to elaborate on that a little bit more, so how do you want to present this? How do you format this on the application? As Molly mentioned, it's really great to be clear and specific. So the best example for this is always acronyms. If you are putting down a club that maybe everyone in your school knows, we as admissions officers for maybe an entirely different region of the country may have no idea what that may mean. So it's important to write everything out and really elaborate on what it is you're engaged with. It's also great to be accurate in terms of the specifics. So like the hours of the week that you're involved with that activity, if this is just a school-based activity or if this is year-round, it's really great to, again, be accurate and specific with the timing of that involvement. It's also important to take advantage of the space available. I believe on the previous slide, we noted that there's 145 characters to describe what you're doing. So please use all that space and more if needed. There's always the additional information section to really talk about, what it is you're doing in that activity, not just the title role that you may have, but maybe the different events that you host. Maybe you are social media chair and you're really involved in a specific time of the year or a particular cycle. It's really great to just elaborate on that to give us more context and understand what you're doing. There's also an importance on highlighting the important pieces of your activity. So again, maybe it's that you're in marching band, but you have a role as as I think Molly mentioned, clarinet section leader. Or if you have a minor role that maybe you've worked up to, or maybe you've worked beyond that by senior year, it's really great to show that progression and highlight that from the activity section. Also, you can consider the order of the list. we will be looking at the entire activities list, all sections from 1 through 10. But if you want to lead with particular activities that you are most excited about, that's totally fine. If you want to lead with maybe your most involved or time intensive activity, that's great. Or maybe you want to lead with pieces that are more academically aligned with your profile, like your research that you may have done. That's always important. So if you want to lead with those pieces, that's great. But again, there's 10 slots and there's also the additional information. So if there's other pieces that you want to include, you can always list in there. Again, you can elaborate on maybe awards or scholarships that you've received or maybe programs. For instance, here at Penn, we have certain programs like PEAT, the Penn Early Exploration Program. And if you want to talk about what you've learned in that or programs at other institutions, that would be a great section to do that. The 145 might be a little bit confining for those sections. So you're always welcome to elaborate whenever you have the time and space. So don't overlook how you format the activities. I know the activities themselves are just as important as how they're formatted, because again, the details are really important for us to see to get the full picture of you and how you're being engaged. So the next slide, we're actually going to do a little bit of an activity to see how these are formatted from our side of things.
Yeah, so what you guys are seeing on the screen here is a pretty realistic representation of really what we see when we review this part of your application. So we've already mentioned the clarinet as an example, but here you have it. So you'll see that the student, they've applied, they've submitted a few activities for us. We see that they play the clarinet. And then on the left-hand side, you guys will see just the hourly commitments per week, how many weeks per year, they plan to continue this, and all the years that they've been in this activity. And then the descriptions really dive into some of those more specific details. So it's the B flat clarinet. They play for the school's marching band, and they're also picked to be drum major their senior year, which is really exciting, and that's a really big kind of next role that the student has taken on. Speech and debate is next. The student has done this in 11th and 12th, 2 hours per week. And then in the description, again, a little more information. They help coach new teammates. They organize events as the vice president. That's huge. They're a VP. So that shows that leadership role. So this is a totally fine representation of the activity section. But the next slide, which Caroline will talk about, is so much better for a variety of reasons.
So these examples, they're totally fine. They're short and sweet, but this next slide, it's the exact same involvements, just teased out a little bit more with greater detail. So before we had clarinet, now we have the title of marching band, the actual activity itself, now in the title of the activity with also the title of drum major. Before that was kind of buried in the body description section, which it's fine to elaborate on there, but it's really great to kind of signpost that and put that in the header of the activity. We also have some descriptors. This is an 80+ member band. That's very different in terms of the skill set required than if it were, 10 people to kind of orchestrate and manage. And we have 80 people. That's huge. So it's really great to know those details. We also see previous leadership experience. So here they left this out before, but here they're stating they were clarinet section leader and also drum major assistant in 11th grade. So we see that progression of leadership and cultivating those skills over time. In the second activity for speech and debate, again, we have the role of VP now in the header of the activity, not buried in the description, with also a little bit more detail as to what they're doing. Again, this is really the space to elaborate on as much as you can. So now we're learning that they've coached 5 underclassmen, that there's this mentorship skill set being grown there. And also helping to organize 2 campus debate events. So maybe talking about the specific roles that you've held in those activities and maybe there's a particular spot that you want to highlight. In addition to these 2 activities, we have a whole nother slot, which is family responsibilities. Again, we really encourage you to think about however you're spending your time outside the classroom, to not overlook family responsibilities or things like a commute or a job. And things of that nature. So now we learn that there's an extra 5 hours a week year round being dedicated to caring for a 10-year-old sibling, they're translating for parents, and they're tending to a sick grandmother that lives in the home. So not only is this important to paint a fuller picture of how the student is spending their time, but there's also some personal qualities being brought out through that. So again, we want you to think full picture and not leave out things that you may think may not apply to your profile, that may not matter. That's really not the case. We want to see you not just as a student, but as a whole individual. So emphasize every part of how you're spending your time. All of that matters.
Yeah, so hopefully that can help, again, just showcase you guys how to really better market yourself, and understand just the variety of activities that we see really on a day-to-day basis. So don't sweat the small stuff. Just some last really tips for you guys, as there's no right or wrong activity. We've mentioned that multiple times throughout the past 30 minutes, but we truly mean that. I think we always get questions like, what can I put on my activity section that's going to make sure I get admitted? And I always like to ask the student question back, being like, well, what do you like to do? Because that's the most important part. We really want you guys to be thoughtful. Don't spread yourself too thin. These should be activities that you like to do, but don't feel like you have to do everything under the sun just because you think it'll look good on your college application. Again, we want you to enjoy high school. These should be things that bring you joy and fulfillment outside of your academics. So again, don't stretch yourselves too thin. Your rest is also important. It's okay to be lopsided or rounded, and kind of what we mean by that is lopsided students sometimes, for example, we might see a student applying to engineering and they have engineering research and they're really involved with like their robotics club at school. They participate in like a coding camp every summer. So it's very like engineering is kind of their point in their application. It's a little bit more like geared towards just that, and that's okay. We also have students that are more rounded, where maybe it's the same student who's applying to engineering, but they're also involved in choir, and maybe they own an Etsy store where they sell friendship bracelets, and maybe they play soccer. So it's okay to be either. We understand that if you're really passionate about one thing and you want to do all sorts of activities that relate to that one thing, that's great. You don't have to be that on the flip end of things. Your time is valuable. Enjoy how you spend it. Just to reiterate it, again, these should be things that you are doing because you like to do them, not because you think they'll make you look good on a college application. And really be specific when articulating your experiences. Again, just really think back to us as admissions officers. This is the first time that we're going to be seeing these activities and how it relates to you. So don't gloss over this section. Include all of those specific details, because that really helps us when identifying, again, the scope of what you're doing, your role within the activity, what the activity is, and so much more. And celebrate your activities and your experiences throughout high school. This is a really exciting time. It is such a fun, it's such a fun stepping stone to kind of this next chapter. And so celebrate your activities and experiences, celebrate them with the peers you're involved in with them. If you're with friends doing different activities, like this should really be something that is exciting. So just make sure to take that time to like give yourself a pat on the back. You know that high school is a lot. You're all juggling a lot at the same time. So really, again, be gracious with yourself and understand that these are big deals and big things that you guys are involved in on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. So as we start to wrap up, we're going to start to get into questions. But again, we hope this has been meaningful for you. Again, whether you apply to Penn or not, just to understand, you know, what should you really choose to engage with? Because as Molly mentioned, your time is so important, and we want to make sure that you're spending it authentically to something that really matters to you and something that adds to your life and really enriches what you want to do. So to get into questions, I know that there is many that have been asked in the chat, which is wonderful, or in the Q&A box, I should say. So we're going to start to get to some of those right now. So let's see. To kick it off, we have a question that's more context related. So there's one that came in that said, the pandemic prevented me from participating in most of my activities in 9th grade. Would it be sufficient to mention this in the additional information section of the Common App, or should I complete the optional pandemic essay? This is a really great question. And this applies to everybody, right? Everyone's freshman year. If you're a senior right now, your freshman year was probably impacted by clubs that didn't run, or maybe there was a different structure to leadership and how elections went with that. Again, it's a very valid question. You could certainly put this in either section. You could put this in the additional information if you want to elaborate on that. If there's other things that have been impacted by the pandemic, that would be a great place to put that. Or if you want to complete the optional pandemic essay, that's fine. Both sections are going to be fully looked over and read. So it's really up to you with whatever place seems most appropriate to you. If there's more that you want to put there than just how clubs were impacted. Molly, do you want to take the next question?
Yeah, absolutely. So another question that came in is, how should you organize your activity section of the Common Application by relation or time spent? For example, I have medical related things and business related things, but I want to go for a bio major. What would be more effective? Organizing your activity section, really the organization does not hold that much weight. I think on the Common Application or the Coalition application, it asks you to like list them in the rank of which is the most important. But that can get hard just because if you're involved in like 10 things, it can be hard to kind of sparse those out. So the organization in which it's written on your application really doesn't matter. I think we more just want to see that you're taking up the space needed and listing all the things that are important to you. Don't get too caught up again in the exact organization of it, because we're going to see it all. We're going to read it all, no matter what. We won't just see like the first two and then be done. Again, we see everything that you list, so no preference for organization there.
Awesome. The next question, should I mention Penn summer programs I've attended and how they've inspired me? Would that be helpful for admissions officers to know? This question really applies to any type of enrichment programs that you've done, Penn specific, or maybe you're doing programs at maybe your state university. You certainly can elaborate on that. In terms of how they have inspired you, again, this could be Penn specific, or just maybe it's the topic itself. Maybe you did like a coding program and it's really helped confirm that you're like, coding is what I want to do and I really want to go into computer science. Certainly, you can definitely elaborate on that. That's always helpful for us admissions officers to know, again, to see where your genuine interests lie. So absolutely, you can certainly write about that and give us some more context. That's great.
Another question, if I have meaningful activities that exceed the top 10, will you review a resume if I choose to submit one in the additional information section? Would I be better off grouping them into the Common App 10 through combining activities under umbrella terms? Now, yeah, we understand that sometimes students go beyond the 10. You're all busy bees. And so submitting a resume is a great way to help add that information. We also see students convey that additional information in the additional information section. I think a resume is a great way to upload that information. Students have the ability to like upload additional PDF documents. So again, we can kind of see it all in one place. Maybe it's just a few extra activities that you want to list in addition to the activities section. You're welcome to do that in the additional information section. And I'm noticing like a common theme with some of these questions is like, where do I put all of this stuff? There's just so many different ways to do that in the application. We read it all, so we won't miss something if it's in the additional information section, but not the resume, vice versa. So really put it where it feels most appropriate. Either really works.
Awesome. Next question. If we have more than 10 extracurriculars that fit on the Common App, any tips on how we should choose which ones to include and which ones to cut? That is a good question. Again, it's really up to you. If you want to order it by the time commitment, if you want to order it by things of most value to you. Again, as Molly said, we're going to say this many times, we look through every element of the application. So if you want to keep all that go over 10 and put those in the additional information, that's fine. Then you don't have to cut any activities. So again, it's really up to you. If you want to showcase just 10, that's fine. But you certainly can elaborate in additional information. But however you want to order it, really up to you.
Next question is, how is quantity versus quality of activities viewed? For example, I am at a professional level in an activity, but it takes up the majority of my time and I'm not able to pursue many other activities as a result. How will this compare to someone with a much wider array of extracurriculars? So a component of each activity that we see listed on this section is, again, that time spent, how many weeks per year you're doing it, how many hours per week. And in the additional description, you're also welcome to include maybe peak times where this is a busier activity versus when it's not as much. this is really of no concern. We understand that sometimes students work like, let's say 35 hours per week. That doesn't always lend a ton of time to other outside hour activities. And again, we understand that the high school student schedule is a busy one. So it's not necessarily if we see that there's one student that has maybe 5 activities and another student has 10, we still see the time commitments that you're spending. And it's not a big, there's again, it won't hurt you if you don't have as many activities, especially if one's taking up considerable more amount of time. Again, time is limited. We understand that you're not gonna be able to do it all. So it's really okay. Don't stress too much about it. And again, we see that information and how much of the time it's taking up.
And that really helps and resonates with the next question too. There's someone who asked if it's harmful to have no substantial extracurriculars due to family responsibilities. Should they flesh those responsibilities out in the additional information section despite already having it in their activities? Again, family responsibilities, again, if they can be 40 hours a week or even more, we are looking at the quality of those, and we always say that we're looking more at the depth of the activities and the breadth. We'd rather see you involved with something deeply than try to fill out every 10 slot just to make it look like you're busy. So again, it's really meaningful to see any activity, again, whether it's school-based or if it's family responsibility. So you can elaborate on those in the activities description. Again, those 145 characters, but if you feel like you need to go beyond that, additional information section is where to do that.
Yeah. Another question we got, can we use the additional information section to explain how our school operates? My school operates remotely, so I take all my classes through an online vendor and through dual enrollment. As a result, I do not go to class in person, or I'm not unable to participate in school activities since they're not offered. Most of my extracurricular activities take place outside of the classroom. This is a great question, and I think relates to, again, students that might be homeschooled or do fully virtual learning. Or maybe, again, there's lots of different, I think, modalities in which schools operate. And the biggest thing is that we see that when reviewing your academic information, we see that, oh, this person's doing a fully virtual high school experience, or the student's homeschooled, so on and so forth. And we understand that that does inherently greatly impact what you're able to participate in. Again, not having kind of that traditional structure that you might think of when you think of activities at school. So we're never going to ding students if you have activities that aren't school-based and that take place outside of that structure, outside of the classroom. So no worries there. We understand, again, that different high school modalities have a lot of impact to how you engage with activities. So no worries. And you were, again, more than welcome to use the additional information section to explain how this operates. But we, again, see that information through the school profile, and also just general knowledge about each of the schools in our different territories that we're very much experts on when reviewing students in different parts of the country and the world.
And then we have another question. Can I put a link on the additional information section? Would the admissions officers be able to see the link? Yes, you can. If you want a link to a site, if you have maybe an article written about your involvements in like the school newspaper or like the big win from the sports team, absolutely, you can certainly put that there. Again, this is kind of like a catch-all section if you want to provide any context for your activities, your classes, maybe like scheduling, whatever it may be. So you certainly could put a link there.
If I have a plethora of activities but none directly focus on my intended major, does that decrease my chances of acceptance? Absolutely not. We understand that not everyone's going to have activities related to their area of study, and that's okay. It does not have to be related to your potential academic major or school in order to be a competitive or worthy activity. So no worries there.
Also, to elaborate on that, I always think that students can miss out on things that they engage with, they think may not directly align with what they want to study. Again, it's so great to see both pointed students or rounded students. Again, the ones that are, very direct with what they want to study are those that kind of dabble in a lot. We take students from both ends of the spectrum. So if you are someone who, maybe you are engaged with all things performing arts, but you want to be an engineer, that's great. That's super cool. So again, don't think that we don't care about those things just because they don't showcase your academic abilities. All of that matters to us. And again, it's great to see however you're spending your time outside the classroom. It can be entirely different. Next question, if my grades had a temporary drop due to taking on more responsibilities within my household while a family member recovered from a sickness, would admissions take that into account? Yes, we certainly do. If there's any type of let's say like blip on a transcript, whether that's from a challenging class, maybe a sickness that you endured, if you had, a very busy time in terms of your sports team or your activity, all of that context is taken into consideration. So if it makes you feel better to talk about your family's sickness and your responsibilities with that, absolutely, you can certainly elaborate and kind of give us that understanding and context to put those grades in perspective.
Absolutely. Another question, how do we differentiate between my activities and honors? It's a good question because sometimes they can very much go hand in hand. I think that activities are, again, the things that you guys are doing on a day-to-day basis, and honors is more so maybe like moments of recognition that you might get from the activity. So maybe you got like most valued player for your soccer team, the MVP honor, and that award would be something you could list in the honors and awards section, but the soccer activity is something you could list in the activity section. So you're welcome to like include your awards maybe in that activity also in the description, but just note there is also a separate section of the application that we leave for you guys to include any activities and honors and can help piece those together. So yeah, any like moments or big recognitions you received in any of your activities, you can list those. I will also say sometimes a honor or like award you received isn't always tied to an activity. That doesn't mean that it's not valuable. So the honors and activities, they might not always overlap, but you're still welcome to put things even if they're not directly tied together. You want to see everything that you've been recognized for, even if it's not, again, a part of one of the activities on your activity section.
Great. We have another really important question here. So someone wrote that I know your institution really values leadership. What would you think about an applicant who doesn't have any kind of leadership positions? Throughout high school, I've grown. I didn't put in as much work earlier on in 9th and 10th grade, which really affected my ability to get such a position. However, I've really grown since then, but I'm still worried about how the past will affect me for admissions, since it's my dream to attend UPenn and I still have solid extracurriculars outside of school. This is a really great question. And I think it's important to emphasize again the context. Everyone was starting out 9th grade, at least for those who are seniors, in the COVID pandemic. Everyone was adjusting, but also the transition to high school for everybody is a transition. It's a change, and it can take some time to kind of get your footing and understand what it is you want to pursue and how much time it may take to really dig deep into activities. So growth from the beginning or growth from seniors fall to spring, all of that is meaningful and matters. And so I don't want you to get stressed that you don't have leadership roles or you don't have too many activities from 9th grade, because again, it's really great to see how you've grown and how you've cultivated different skills throughout all of high school. So as you mentioned, don't sweat it. Again, it's great to see however you're spending your time. Again, if you're really digging deep senior year, fantastic. But if it's something that you've been involved with since 9th grade, that's fine too. So yes, we value leadership, but that can take place at any point throughout your high school career.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question, if I take a subject outside of my school, does that count as an extracurricular activity? 100%. That can be an academic activity. Maybe it's not if you're like doing theater or soccer, but that's still something that you're doing extra outside of your school to fulfill your time and something that interests you. So your activities can absolutely be academically based. Yeah, 100%. And I think we've got a lot of questions and they have slowed down. I know that there's still a lot in the Q&A that we won't be able to get to, but again, we're always here to continue helping you guys as you are making your application and crafting the various components. But I don't know if Caroline, you have anything else you want to mention about all these lovely questions we just got?
Sure. Yes, you can keep these questions coming. It might not be during the session, it might be on our admissions help desk. So we're actually going to be sharing this webinar out on our YouTube. So you can find our YouTube at Penn Admissions. That's the name of the channel, where there's many other resources to use, whether it's how to write your personal statement, how to approach different Penn supplemental essays, or again, something like this, talking about your activities list. We really want to help you and kind of calm any of those fears and really build up your confidence going into the college application process. So this is going to be recorded and this is going to be shared on YouTube. In terms of those other questions, you could submit those, as I mentioned, on our help desk, which you can find at the URL on the screen, admissions.upenn.edu/contact us. Admissions officers like myself, Molly, and others behind the scenes are the ones going to be answering those. It's actually admissions officers. So you can get as specific as you want, or if you have any general questions, we're happy to answer those too. If you are excited by what you've heard today, if you want to stay in contact with us, you can actually visit us virtually or in person. But virtual tours will go into just about every building on campus. You can find those again with the link on the screen /visit to see what facilities we have on campus, and then also tune in for a virtual info session. So if you want to learn more about the college application process and more about Penn at large, you can do that. We have those I believe once a week. So you can tune in for those virtual sessions in addition to the in-person ones. And then, of course, last but not least, we also have social media. All of our handles are at PeerReviewing Penn for Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. These are a wonderful resource for students just to get to know Penn off of paper, off of our brochures, and see what students are doing, whether that's in the dining hall, residence halls, classrooms, or even Philly at large. So definitely check that out if you have some spare time and want to stay in contact with us. But thank you so much for tuning in today. Molly, do you have any closing remarks before we close?
Yeah, just a big thank you. And I know that this is a probably like stressful topic, college applications. It's so exciting to look forward, but it also comes with a lot of work. And so just be proud of what you've done so far and are going to be able to showcase on your applications to the many schools you might have on your list. We're so excited for you guys and we are here to help. But just know you guys will truly be successful in whatever you do. So hopefully the tips and tricks that Caroline covered can help relieve some pressure, better inform you as you move forward with this process. But we're so excited and happy to have gotten to connect with so many of you guys tonight. Just thank you so much for tuning in.
Yes, awesome. All right. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day, morning, night, wherever you're tuning in from, and best wishes to you all. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.